Hey, this is Madalyn
and Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. Let's dive right in and talk about Spaces on desktop. Now, we did try this out a little bit last week, and it wasn't very successful, was it, Madalyn? And it doesn't look like from this thread it's really moved on very far.
It's still buggy, and I've heard other people say they're still having issues even this week, even though it's been a week since we've been doing some testing. So it sounds like it hasn't gotten any further, but Legion, who is always keeping an eye out for things that are going on with Twitter X, as we're calling it today. But actually his tweet, he says, X, I like that. He says that they're still working on Spaces for desktop, but that there's still some issues going on. So, I don't know. I think we're just at a wait and see. I thought that they would move a little bit more quickly to work out all the bugs. And being that it's been like, a week and a half, so almost 2 weeks. I think Thursday, I think tomorrow will be 2 weeks since they officially launched Spaces on desktop, like where you can actually speak on desktop. So I just thought they'd fix it already. So I'm not happy.
And this was kind of our fear, wasn't it, when we were talking about it last week, that we're going to come up with these glitches and spot these bugs and things, but is anyone actually there to maintain it or to update it or to improve it in any way? And does that not turn people away from it if it's not working properly? And one of these bugs is really quite intrinsic to the feature in itself, in that it's muting people and cutting people out automatically, and there's nothing that speaker can do about it. So literally you can't hear them, which seems quite vital, really, in this social audio realm, right?
Yeah, I'm just not very impressed with how this is working at the moment, and why did they even launch it if it's this buggy? So hopefully they'll fix it quick, because I think most of our listeners know we have been waiting very patiently to be able to speak directly through desktop, especially with us being podcasters and liking to use all of our typical podcast gear when we're on a computer versus doing it through our phones right now. It's just a whole different thing.
And this one that Legion's put up on the thread from this week, from yesterday, it says, essentially, if you're being invited to be a speaker or co-host via desktop, the pop-up that comes up inviting you to do that actually remains on your screen unless it's cancelled by the host or the space end. I mean, that's isn't that 101 kind of basic stuff? If someone accepts the invite, that should disappear. Again, like, how long do we wait for these things to be sorted out from the team? I guess as long as we waited for it to actually be a thing, to be fair.
Right. Well, I mean, how many engineers are working on the team? And we know it's not as many as there were.
Yeah, I think we probably count them on one hand.
Exactly. That's probably part of the issue right there.
Quite possibly. But if anyone has been using Spaces on desktop successfully, then do listen out for the mic call out later on. We'd love to hear from you and chat to you about it and about your experiences, good or bad.
Yeah, we would definitely love to hear about our listeners with that. So our good friend Andrew at Spaces Dashboard did a really cool tweet. He always puts these tweets out that he says things that I just don't even think to put out there. And I thought this one was brilliant. He says, make sure you flaunt your history on Spaces when applying for that job. I mean, mind blown for those of us that do podcasting or something in audio, video, you're live streaming. If you were looking for new work, that would be something you'd have on your resume. But, if you do have a history using Spaces, that's a great idea. Add it to your application. Super smart.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Spaces is a great way as well to kind of position yourself as a thought leader. If you're talking into other people's spaces or hosting spaces yourself on particular topics, it's a great way to show that you're confident in speaking about a chosen topic. So having all of those spaces to hand and letting people know that this is where they can hear you speaking on your chosen topic is a really great idea. And of course, Andrew's tool, Spaces Dashboard, makes it so easy to do that, because you can share the page that's got your spaces on it, and people can then totally see them all in one place and listen through to them. So yeah, really another good idea there from the brain of Andrew. So thank you for that one.
Well, and I just have to do a shout out. I don't see him. Oh yeah. Spaces Dashboard is here. Okay. Hey, Andrew. I have to say, this new alert feature is the bomb. I am just so blown away. Props to Andrew, props to Spaces Dashboard team. If I know we talk about this free website all the time, if you're not familiar, go to spacesdashboard.com. It's the best place to go to discover different spaces, different conversations going on right now or scheduled for later, or hearing the replay of something that's already happened. Several weeks ago, we mentioned about this new alert feature. So I was able to get signed up. I had a few issues. Andrew worked with me to get it all fixed. And I have to say, Suze, this feature alone is absolutely amazing and worth whatever cost he comes up with on a subscription model. It's free right now, but I can't get over at how amazing this is. And the space you saw me on earlier with the Krastensteins, I have both of those brothers on my alerts through Spaces Dashboard. So if they host or co-host a space, I'm going to get the email notification. And as I've mentioned before here, I have on my Gmail on my phone, I have it set so specific email addresses will actually do a pop-up on my phone. So anytime one of these alerts pings in my email, I'm going to get it on my phone immediately. I don't do a lot of notifications on my phone because with all the different things I do, my phone would just be nonstop and I would never get any work done. But some very small specific things, I will turn it on. So I'm not missing some of these great spaces that normally I would not get a notification in time. I would find out about it after the fact. So I'm just blown away. Have you tried it yet, Suze?
Yeah, and I think it's great. You know, I'm in and out of my inbox all day long. So getting the notifications there is a great way of not missing out. Quite often I can't jump into the spaces live, but I do bookmark the spaces so that I can go back and listen to the replays later on. So I've got Twitter Blue, so I've got a folder in there that allows me, you know, I've kind of named it spaces to listen to later or something like that, and you know, I just save it to there, and then I can go back in when I've got a moment and listen to it. But yeah, it's kind of finding those ways, isn't it? Finding your own processes and streamlining it for yourself. It's an interesting thing to do.
Exactly. So that's all of our spaces news for this week, but we actually have something interesting that was uncovered on Threads. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this is a post from Alessandro Palusi, who's one of our favourite reverse engineer, tweeters, posters here on X.
Right, posters. That's what we're supposed to say, because it's not tweets anymore, it's posts. So generic. So generic.
But this is a screenshot that he has obviously come across somewhere, suggesting that Threads, our all-new favourite platform from Meta, may well be working on voice posts. So, Madalyn, what do you think of this?
Well, I will have to say, it would be great to see some features that will bring some of us back to Threads. I did like everybody else. I jumped on Threads in the beginning. Let's see what the fuss is all about. And pretty quickly, I got bored with it. So I have not been on that platform in quite some time. And I just don't have the desire to, because it's just been so plain, and I just don't see what's the reason for me to spend my time there when it's better served over here on Twitter X. But, and there's always going to be that but, what features are they going to add? So to hear they're working on voice posts, well, that sounds interesting. That might be a reason to go back and check it out, because we're all about ways of using audio. So are you using Threads much?
So I'm not. I'm a bit like you. I went over there, I had a look, a bit like lots of people, as it would appear. I think there's lots of reasons for that, which I can come to in a minute. But in terms of the voice posts, I think, you know, anything that these apps are adding, they're all trying to just keep us in the app for a little bit longer. That's all any of these features are trying to do. And it's, you know, probably one of the reasons why Elon wants to make this the everything app, is so that we spend our entire lives over here. We give away as much data as possible. And, you know, let's face it, that's what these platforms are really kind of doing behind what it is that we do on them. But I was thinking about this, like adding voice posts to Threads. Well, why is someone more likely to use voice notes on Threads than they are to use it over here, say? And, you know, we've had voice notes here on X, formerly Twitter, for years. And we've spoken about this so many times. It is there. Both you and I love it. Both you and I don't use it very often. And neither do very many other people either. And kind of why is that? So I did think about this a little bit before we went live today. And I think it all comes back down to this idea that, as we've said 100 times, voice is very personal. That's the reason why we make such strong connections right here in social audio. Now, the reason why we're happy to speak maybe in a conversation like this is that we've got a group of people with us. We're quite used to conversing. We know that this is in a public space. We've kind of got an idea of who might come in and out, people that follow us, those kind of things. If you're doing a voice note of any sort, either you're doing it to someone that you know, in which case, why would you do it in public? You're more likely to use it as a voice DM, or you're doing it to someone that you don't know. And in that scenario right there, that's really vulnerable, because going right back to what I said at the start, voice is really personal and really intimate, and it leaves you kind of quite open. It gives away quite a lot about you. You know, you can fake confidence if you're writing about a certain topic. You can even fake the knowledge. You can go and copy and paste it for somewhere else, but you can't do that when you're speaking. So if you're literally just speaking there, kind of broadcasting, putting that note out there into the world, you can't kind of fake what comes across, if you like, in your tone of voice, but you also can't govern who's listening to that and where that might then be retweeted to or sent out to or things like that. So I think voice notes, actually, the vulnerability behind us using our voices prevents us from using it in that one-way scenario. I think the two-way thing works because we're used to having conversations. I think the one-way thing kind of doesn't, and people don't really latch onto it. If we're going to do a one-way thing, generally we'll do that privately to people that we know, and we do it in the DMs. There you go.
Well said. I loved everything you just told us. I love that. If they do put these voice posts on Threads, would that make you more inclined to go spend some time over there and play around with it to see if it's worth your time?
Probably no more likely than here. That's the thing. And I think the reason that people haven't stayed over on Threads is that they were so busy making it like Twitter to be the next Twitter, or what Twitter used to be or whatever, that they actually haven't made it different enough. You know, all of these platforms used to have their own little characters, didn't they? They all used to be where you went for posting your, lovely pictures over on Instagram, your work life over on LinkedIn, checking in with family and stuff like that over on Facebook. It's not like that now. All of them are trying to do all the things. And because of that, everyone's getting a bit kind of fatigued by the blurred lines, I think. So no, I don't think I would spend more time over there if they added voice or audio into it particularly. I think at the moment people are struggling to find a platform that suits them because they have all lost their identity in a way. They've lost their character by trying to spread out and all be all the things to all the people. That's how I feel about it anyway. What about you? Would you spend more time there?
Right now, no, because they just don't have very many features, and I just don't feel like what could I do there that would be different elsewhere? Like so many of us went onto Threads thinking, okay, clean slate. I'm starting over with something fresh and new. What could I do differently here? Why should I use this? And I just couldn't find anything. I saw plenty of people just copying what they were doing on Twitter, like basically copy and pasting tweets, putting them into their threads. I'm like, well, why do that? Like, if you're not going to be over here on Twitter X, it's so funny. Like, I try to not say Twitter by itself because I just know we're supposed to kind of like move on, that this is a new platform, new name platform. That's why I keep saying Twitter X. But I don't know. I go over there and it just doesn't do anything for me. And not to say it's not great for other people. I know people are over there using it and they love it and they're getting a lot out of it. And I think it's just a personal thing. If you get something out of a platform, of course you're going to spend time there. If you don't, then why would you spend your time there? I mean, I know many of us marketers in social media will say, well, go to where your audience is. But you also have to like being on that platform. Like TikTok, I haven't wanted to spend time there. So for my Madalyn Sklar social media digital marketing person, like I don't use it for that because it's not a platform I care for. But with other things I do separate from this part of my business, I do like it. So it really just depends on what you're trying to get out of a platform and if you even like being on the platform. You can't force somebody to like it and be there. So far for me, Threads, there's nothing I really like about it. I think a lot of us just went on there to see what is this all about? Is it truly going to be a replacement for being over here on Twitter X? Maybe, maybe not. For me, it was a no. Like I think it's great for people who are all in on Instagram, because I feel like the thing missing on Instagram is what Threads brings to the table. They allow you to just have conversations with people. And I just don't feel like Instagram is super conversational.
Yeah, and it was Instagram that we heard about kind of adding some voice elements as well, audio elements previously. So it kind of didn't surprise me that Meta sort of announced that they might add this into Threads because, you know, we kind of said there, like people lost interest in it. I think that was because you didn't really get buy-in, did you? You were sort of automatically part of Threads if you were on Instagram. And I think they just expected that to stick. But I think if you haven't actually gone along and signed up and put your hand up for it and said, yes, I want to do this, then you've not got quite the same buy-in as you have if you're just kind of given the free sample, if you like. Like, you get a free sample for something. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go out and buy it again, right? And it feels a little bit like that. I mean, it was a strategy, I guess, but it's no wonder that those numbers have really tumbled.
Right. And Matt Navarra had put out a tweet showing some of these numbers, talking about how the Threads app usage is down 79% after a month. And it didn't surprise me. These numbers in these stats here in this tweet it just didn't really surprise me. It's just kind of like when we think back to Clubhouse and the big mad rush to Clubhouse and all the downloads, all the usage, and then it died off and it just wasn't what it used to be. So interesting that they did a big push. Everybody went to go see what the fuss was about, but I don't see a lot of people leaving this platform in favor of that one.
No, I mean, certainly I've seen people leaving here, but I don't necessarily think they're just taking up straight over on Threads particularly. So no, interesting though. Very interesting. I mean, you mentioned their Clubhouse. This next tweet is from Michael Sterling and is all about Clubhouse. You know, Michael.
And I'm like, Club who?
Yeah.
Like, Club who?
Yeah, in our notes, Madalyn's literally titled this one, Clubhouse, Club who? Laugh out loud.
It's been that long. Like, I have not been over there in so long. I'm kind of like, Club who? I don't even think of that platform much. I know we talk about it from time to time here, although I'm usually quiet during this segment because I just don't. I liked it in the beginning. I was there before Spaces even started. I saw so much potential, but then very quickly as it was, and I was there early before most people were on, but once it was growing and more people were on there, they just turned it into something I didn't care for. So I favored Spaces instead.
Yeah, and you know, Michael's tweet here is basically saying, look, we're approaching 4 months since Clubhouse finished this year-long club to house transition. They laid off more than half the workforce. They went heads down working on these big changes. And since then, we've heard very, very little. In fact, absolutely nothing. They said they were going dark. They absolutely meant it. And I think at this point, surely we're looking at like a complete overhaul of the app, aren't we? I mean, when you think of everything that's happened since we last heard from them, they've got to have some kind of reaction to what this platform right here, whatever we're calling it today, has become, to the social audio landscape, which is completely different. You know, it blew up and kind of blew away a little bit in the time since all this has happened. I really think Clubhouse could be unrecognisable when it comes back, don't you?
It's very possible. I'm just so surprised they're being this quiet for this long and we just don't know what they're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Even something like a video platform wouldn't surprise me, or, you know, a live stream platform that kind of moves away from audio being its sole medium. I think even that wouldn't surprise me at this point, really.
Yeah, agree.
Well, I'd like to talk now about, I'm going to move on, Madalyn, and talk about podcasting, if that's okay.
Yes, you know I love to talk about podcasting.
Arielle Nissenblatt has joined the space, hopefully to talk to us a little bit about this next story, which is about SquadCast and Descript partnering up to become a Squad Descript cast type platform, which will be amazing.
So here's the thing. So we had seen a tweet that came through our feed yesterday from Jennifer Navarrete. She is an occasional guest host here in All Things Audio. And she posted a tweet saying, posted a post. Oh, no, that sounds weird. She posted a post. We're not supposed to say tweets anymore. We're supposed to say post. Descript acquiring SquadCast. And she shared a screenshot. And that was I guess I just missed that news. I did not know until I saw Jennifer's tweets. I'm like, oh, how interesting is this? And so I was reading into it more. I have another tweet in the nest that I share that has more details about it. But basically, SquadCast is now part of Descript. And if you're not familiar, is a really popular audio and video editing tool that's used for, a lot of podcasters use it. And they have a free version. They have paid options. Their lowest paid starts at $12 a month. Is very reasonably priced. And SquadCast has now joined them. And if you're a Descript subscriber, you now also have access to SquadCast. Super interesting. And the thing that I noticed with all this, Suze, with you and I being longtime podcasters, there's different ways to record podcasts. And when I think back to when I first started 10 years ago, what was really popular was using Ecamm Live through Skype. And looking back, what a terrible system that was. It was clunky, so many issues. I don't know what did you use in the beginning, Suze, since you've been podcasting a long time?
Skype early on, definitely. And then just kind of avoiding it at all costs if I possibly could.
Remote recording is hard, back then.
Working at the radio station, I was fairly lucky because, we had feeds and different like telecoms that we could use to record in quite good quality. But yeah, I mean, quite quickly we would get people to record locally themselves and send us their file, even though we were doing interviews with them over the phone for the radio station. So that's just how poor that kind of thing was. But yeah, things like SquadCast, Riverside, all of those, they've totally changed that and turned around what remote recording can really be. And yeah, I'd like to bring Arielle in now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Arielle.
Arielle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No, this is great. I'd love to hear about this. I did not see this coming at all.
I'm so glad. So technically, when I was in London at the end of May, I knew that this was on the horizon and I had to keep my mouth shut for 3.5 months. And just so you know, I'm really not good at that. And so this is the biggest triumph of my career, is keeping quiet for 3 months. So I have, for the past 2.5 months been asking people questions about their editing habits, their recording habits, all kind of secretly, stealthily trying to understand what people are doing and then bringing that information back and then trying to create the best possible post-production tool as we possibly can. But then also with SquadCast being integrated, it's still also going to be production. So it's really, I think it is the perfect tool for podcasters now. I've been using SquadCast and then going right into Descript with my recordings, and I produce podcasts much faster now. So I do a podcast recommendation podcast and a podcast about podcast trailers, and it's all done within Descript at this time. So it's great.
I mean, it must really streamline that process. And for any solo podcaster as well, you're literally doing that all under one platform now. So you can record it and then switch straight into editing it in the same place. Amazing.
Yeah, definitely solo, but also soon to be, truly as of yesterday, it's not all within the app just yet. That will be in the next few months, but now it's all like fully integrated and you should be able to do everything that you need to do, recording all the way to post-production.
And currently then, as Madalyn was saying, anyone who's got a subscription with either of those services, Descript or SquadCast, now has access to the other one. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. If you're already somebody who uses Descript, then you just have to make a SquadCast account. And if you already are a SquadCaster and want access to Descript, you just have to make that account and then link them.
I mean, I know particularly as the kind of visual editing tool. I mean, it's a tool where you can edit via the text, isn't it, as opposed to being able to see the waveform. And is that something
you can do both?
Oh, really? So you can now switch between the two of those as well?
Yeah, basically the way I do it is, so like I said, I record a podcast recommendation podcast because it's a solo show. I record right into Descript's recorder. So I just, plug in my microphone, record. Hi, welcome to Feedback with Earbuds. This is Arielle. This week on the show, we're recommending podcasts about X, Y, and Z. So I speak for 5 to 10 minutes. Then if I am stumbling like this, or if I say a joke that I think is stupid, or if I retake a line, I will go through and cut that out by way of editing like a Word doc. If I say twice, then I'll just cut out one of the, if I says. And then what I do is I go through and I make sure that it actually sounds good. So I hit the button that says studio sound to make sure that even though I am recording with a nice microphone, I'm still in a non-sound treated room. So this just makes it sound a little bit better. That's a product right within Descript. You just press a button. It takes a few seconds to render. It sounds much better. And then I go on to adding my music, adding in any other sorts of sound effects that are all available right within Descript. I really sound like I'm selling, but like this is genuinely just my workflow. Like if I want to include, a siren or like a cricket sound, really anything, there's a stock library of audio. So it's really amazing. Audio, if you wanted to just do sound effects, but also for intro and outro music, whatever you want is there. And then you can look below the dock and you'll see your waveform, and you can extend the waveform if you want to get a more granular look at the waveform. You can zoom in, zoom out, you can do crossfades, you can also do like all sorts of EQs. It's not as intense as Pro Tools at this point, but if you need to get a certain amount of the way and then bring it into Pro Tools, you can definitely do that. For me, for my purposes, I can do everything within Descript.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's always been the crossfades that have really bugged me. Things like if I pull out a filler word using a visual editor via the text and the breath isn't right and stuff like that, and not being able to tweak that. But
you can tweak it now.
Yeah, it sounds as though Descript has really kind of come forward in leaps and bounds with what you're actually able to do in there. And for those of us creating video podcasts as well, obviously Descript added that in. We spoke about that on All Things Audio just a few months ago, that they'd added in kind of extra sort of video capabilities as well. So it really sounds like you're trying to be the one-stop shop.
Yeah, pretty much. You can, well, now you'll be able to record interviews, but even beforehand, if you wanted to just edit video, yes, the storyboard product within Descript makes it so that it's very easy to have different scenes and to edit different scenes and to put different text, and you can have different types of captions. It's really amazing.
Wow, I'll definitely be checking that one out. What about you, Madalyn? Are you going to dive back in and see what you think of it?
Yeah, I've had a Descript account for a long time, the free version. I haven't used it enough where I felt like I needed to, have a paid account, but I have played around with it a bit. My question for you is, everybody knows Zoom now, right? Since COVID, so many people use Zoom for everything. And I think a lot of podcasters, people that got into podcasting in the last 3 years, are like, oh, I can do this right in Zoom. Now I cringe whenever somebody says they're recording a podcast in Zoom because I think the audio quality is terrible. But for people that are not as techy and as savvy as us for podcasting, that might be their only solution. But of course, we're seeing all these other platforms. StreamYard now has the ability to have podcasters do local recording. I use Zencaster. I think is super cool what's going on over there at Descript, that, you guys are doing what these other platforms are doing, or making yours even better. So what do you say to people that like know Zoom and they're not techie? Like, what you guys are doing is better than using that platform.
Zoom is like, even if you're not techie, it's not ideal. The only reason you might think it's a great option is because it's a word that you've heard of before. Everybody knows Zoom. But when you need to record somebody else on Zoom, you are not going to sound great because it's recording the internet connection. It's not recording locally. You have to press a ton of buttons and get your guests to press a ton of buttons in order for it to record locally. So when you record with SquadCast, and now SquadCast by Descript, it records locally. It records your side of the conversation and your guest side of the conversation. And that means that you're never going to have those internet glitchy sounds. It's just going to sound like great quality. So you might think you are doing something by using Zoom because it's easy, but in the long run, it's going to be a lot of post-production. And even in the short term, you're going to have to make sure that your guest turns on this, turns on that, and make sure that if they are on the path to recording locally, you have to make sure everything is pressed right and everything. But with SquadCast, with Descript, it's just much easier. It's really plug and play. And if you're concerned about making your guests download something, Descript has a web browser version, and eventually the recorder will be in there as well.
Wow. Well, there's one to check out for this week then.
And also, I noticed, Arielle, on your Twitter profile, your X profile, that you have a community called Podcasting Twitter. That is so cool. I just signed up. Tell us real quickly about that, because I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, I want to say October of 2021, Twitter, what was then Twitter, they created something called communities. And Albin Brooke, who's the marketing manager at Buzzsprout, asked me if I wanted to co-run this Twitter community with him. It was in beta at the time. Now, we've been doing it for 2 years, and it's really just a place where anybody can see it, but you can only tweet within it if you're in the group. So you can click on my profile and then request to join if you're hearing my voice right now. And, it's not super active, but people do ask questions there and get answers there. There's a lot of spam, so I have to go in there and delete the spam every once in a while. But in theory, it's a place where if you have a question about podcasting or a question about microphones or a question about audio, you can post in there and it'll go to all the other people who have opted in to be in this community. So it's just a streamlined approach to podcasting community stuff.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it.
Alex, I see your hand there.
Hey guys, it says all things audio. I have many questions, but I'll limit it to two if that's okay. Fairly recent podcast post from the last month. I've been doing spaces for, I want to say 6-7 months weekly. So I definitely feel that commitment point that you mentioned. I am also a Descript user. The jump from hosting spaces into Descript is not a very easy one. I know there's other tools that I use. I wanted to ask Arielle, like, importing a transcript is going to be an option at some point, or are we to rely on like Descript transcript, which is kind of a little bit older? I think you guys started before this like last wave of transcription. And I know for a fact, like for podcast, transcription is very important. And the second question I want to ask Susan after that, if that's okay, about audio specifically.
Sure. Okay. So you wanted to ask Arielle about the transcript over in Descript.
So just generally kind of the pipeline from a Twitter space into like a production podcast, the studio sound, I use it, it's incredible. But transcription is not that great compared to some other tools. So I would love to
True, yeah.
it.
I believe they say that I can't remember the exact percentage. It gets you a good amount of the way there. But then usually what I do personally, if I'm using the transcript for publishing purposes, I go through it, I make sure it's better. Personally, that's my workflow.
I think the thing is with transcription, it's the same with kind of any of them. None of the voice to text engines, really, those models just haven't improved and haven't moved on at the same rate as other things. And so because of that, we're still kind of in this no man's land where you kind of get a half thing, which, you would have had nothing before. Let's face it, no one's going to sit there. The touch typing is not real for me. So, I'd rather get partway there, as Arielle says, than not there at all. But it does take some work. I sat there today, with a transcript and spent an hour making it web ready because it still had an awful lot that didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. So it's a shame, but I think a lot of that is to do with that kind of speech to text modeling, and that just needs improving and working on.
I work at the space. I've created a startup for translation, and I'm very familiar with transcription. Whisper from OpenAI is really, really good, and I don't think Descript uses it. And stuff like Assembly are doing some incredible things. And I think that the main part is, sorry, not to go too deep into the geekiness and transcription, right?
No,
but
do it.
Here, oh, okay. super geeky. Whisper, that most people use now, I don't think Descript still uses it, has a thing where it's called an initial prompt. So when you actually kind of prompt it, when you give it ahead of the time, the names of the people, let's say, Suze and Madalyn, right, and Arielle, my accent could, prevent it from regular transcription from picking it up. But if you provide this ahead of time, it actually like shows up in transcript as well. So I don't think Descript has that yet. Added it to Torgun, my transcription software. It made everything much, much better. Assembly also has for free like a playground. There's a few tools out there. Susan, I encourage you to go and look. I can DM you some of them. It's getting incredible, especially for English, especially for folks who are well-spoken like you guys and not accented like me. Second follow-up question, Susan, for you. You sound great. I host spaces. My audio quality is kind of shit. I just recently bought a lap mic. I don't know how to use. Can you give like some basic outlines of like good audio quality on Spaces if you can, because there's no web yet, or the desktop version still is very buggy. How do you get to good quality of sound on Spaces? I have Space tomorrow. I really want to do a good one.
This is what this space is all about, and totally I want to hear from Michael in a minute, because he's someone who will be able to give you a great outline of like a basic setup that you might need. But one of the things that we talk about here quite often is the fact that you can only ever kind of optimize for Spaces in terms of quality, because the way that Spaces is broadcast is where it's in real time, reliant on a very, very small amount of data from your audio being sent very, very quickly across the airwaves and whatever. So you can never get a really high quality audio sound, really. But what you can do is put some things in place to make sure that what you're sending into your phone or your desktop shortly, hopefully, once they get it really working properly, is the best that it possibly can be. And at a basic level, what we generally say is, trying to use at least a USB mic, if not an XLR mic, into a sound card of some sort. Myself and Madalyn were talking about using the Scarlett 2i2 last week, which is an interface where you can plug in your XLR mic and then it's got a USB out so that you can then go into whatever device it is that you're going to speak into Spaces in. That can really help. But yeah, I think, Michael, can I bring you in here? Because this is definitely your area of expertise.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh.
It sounds like this is definitely your area of expertise.
The reason I asked if you could hear me is because I'm actually on desktop this week. They fixed something between last week and this week that I can actually do it now.
Did it disconnect for you at all, Michael? Because it used to just suddenly mute and disconnect like everybody
It hasn't
else.
so far. No, so far so good.
You sound amazing. Jesus.
So, thank you. Thank you. I am actually using professional gear right now to speak. I have a Pro mic XLR into a Rodecaster. I'm connected USB to my MacBook Pro, and then I'm talking to you through Safari. It actually works, amazingly enough. So, but you can also do it with the phone. You don't have to necessarily have the computer to do that. But now that they've opened it up to desktop and it actually seems to kind of work, that does make it so that people with USB microphones and other gear that doesn't necessarily have that TRRS connection, you can use it on Spaces now. So that's great.
Michael, once you're on desktop, you sound amazing because this is a professional desktop setup, right? And you said Safari as well. Do you find a difference between
I'm using browser? Safari right now, but I suppose you could use most any other browser. I just actually posted, not tweeted, a little post about this, and that I have a link to my website that I've actually listed off stuff. People ask me all the time, what gear should I use? What gear should I use? So I created a website about it. So that's linked there. But, basically, if you have a USB microphone, like a Blue Yeti or anything like that you've plugged into your computer for Zoom or any of those other online conferencing things, now you should be able to use it for Spaces on desktop, assuming that your system audio is set up correctly. You need to make sure that your input and output are both selected for that microphone. So, and you want to wear headphones too, because obviously when you wear headphones, it helps isolate sound and eliminate echo.
And Alex, by the way, I'm speaking with my podcast gear through my iPhone right now. And I'm using a Zoom PodTrack P4, and I have my Shure SM7B microphone from a Cloud Lifter directly into the Zoom PodTrack P4, and I'm using a wireless adapter, Bluetooth adapter to my iPhone. And I've been using this setup, I guess, since the start of the year, I think. Does that sound right, Suze? I think that's when George had finally made the video showing us how he was doing it. And I love this setup, but I'll be happier when I can just use my Scarlett and my other gear directly through my computer.
This has been wonderful, guys. I have to hop off, but Michael, I'll follow you, Susan and Madalyn. Thanks for your communities. I'll join definitely. Now that this is new to me, I found people feels like thank you for
Thank you for being here. So I have a question for Michael. Michael, you've been a speaker in here for a little while now. You've had not one issue on desktop. You're not it's not.
I've moved over to other browser windows while I've been talking with you all. I actually did purposefully mute myself on Twitter or X here just momentarily, but you can still hear me. I unmuted and everything seems to be working okay. Fingers crossed.
Wow. Suze, I think they fixed it.
They heard us moaning about it, Madalyn. That's what it was.
It sounds great. Yeah. I haven't tried it since I had such a horrible experience with it with Andrew doing through Spaces dashboard when we were testing it. I guess that was the weekend before last. And I was telling you all the story last week, and I was so excited to finally try it. But it was a very disappointing experience. And that auto mute, and then it would just stop. I couldn't hear anybody, and I had to leave and come back at least a dozen times, and it just made for a terrible experience. So I've seen people still complain about it, so that's why I haven't done it again. But Michael, you're giving me hope now, so I'm going to play around with it some more.
Yeah, and I had kind of half thought, oh, should I try and speak directly into desktop today? And then I remembered that actually as a host or co-host, you can't start a space, I don't think, from desktop.
No, not as a host, not yet.
So as yet, they haven't added that in, but I'm guessing they're trying to iron out potentially those bugs so that people can just speak into the space first of all, and then eventually we'll be able to host and co-host and stuff as well from the desktop too. But yeah, thank you so much for joining via desktop, Michael, and giving it a go again and being successful. Mind you, you have just dropped down to listener, but I'll assume that was on purpose.
Well, we've come to the top of the hour. We shared a lot today, as we always do. So much news to report. And thank you, Arielle, for joining us and sharing what's going on at Descript. That is such exciting news. Can't wait to keep watching all of that develop.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.